You ever have a moment where something inside you just clicks? Not loud, not dramatic, just a soft switch flipping in your chest. Yeah, that kind of moment. That was the day my own child looked at me and said, "You either do what my husband says, or you leave." And trust me, that sentence didn't just land. It sliced. And that's when something changed in me. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I didn't even blink. I just smiled. And that smile, it scared her more than anger ever could. Because that smile meant I was done explaining myself. Done begging to be respected. Done being the walking ATM. And that was the beginning of the end. See, things didn't start ugly. They never do. It always begins small. A little favor here. A little, "Dad, can you help?" There. And you say yes. Because you're a parent. Because that's what you do. And that's how the slow bleed begins. First it was a rent payment. Just this once. Then it was a car repair. Bad timing, you know. Then groceries. Then credit cards. Then we are short again. Then it's your responsibility to help. And somewhere along the way, love turned into obligation. I kept telling myself it was temporary. That young couple struggle. That life is expensive. That things would stabilize. But they didn't stabilize. They spiraled. And I was the safety net they kept jumping into. Every time I tried to step back, there was guilt. Heavy guilt. You don't care about your grandchildren. You want us to fail. You're choosing money over family. And man, that hits deep. So I kept paying. Quietly. Secretly. Even when my own savings started looking thinner. Even when my wife looked at me like she knew something wasn't right. I kept covering the damage. Because I thought that's what love looked like. But love without respect? That's just slow self-destruction. And I didn't realize that yet. Things got worse when her husband started talking numbers. Not dreams. Not goals. Numbers. How much is the house worth? How much is retirement? What happens when you're gone? Gone. Like I was already halfway buried. At first, I laughed it off. But he wasn't joking. He'd look at me like I was a walking inheritance. Not a father. Not a human. Just future money. And she started echoing him. That's what hurt most. Not him. Her. You have enough. You don't need all that. It'll be ours anyway. Ours. Like I was already erased. And that's when I started losing sleep. Not because of money. But because I realized I wasn't seen as a person anymore. Just a resource. One night, I sat alone in the kitchen. Lights off. Just the fridge humming. And I asked myself something that scared me. When did I become afraid of my own child? That question stayed with me. Because I was afraid. Afraid to say no. Afraid to set limits. Afraid she'd take the kids away from me. And she knew that. The threats started soft. You won't see them if you don't help. Then sharper. Don't test me. And I felt trapped. Like I had to buy access to my own blood. That's not love. That's leverage. And leverage is ugly. Then came the breaking point. There had been another argument about money. Another demand. Another "you owe us." And I finally said something dangerous. No. Just that. No shouting. No speech. Just no. The room went silent. Her husband laughed under his breath. Like I had told a joke. She didn't laugh though. She got cold. You either do what my husband says, or you leave. That was the sentence. The one that rewired me. In that moment, I saw everything clearly. Years of enabling. Years of guilt. Years of being emotionally cornered. And I realized something brutal. I built this monster with kindness. Yeah. That stung. But clarity. Clarity is powerful. So I smiled. And that smile said what words didn't. You don't control me anymore. I stood up slowly. Calm. Almost peaceful. And I said, then I'll leave. You could hear a pin drop. Because they didn't expect that. They expected panic. Begging. Negotiation. Not peace. I walked out of that house feeling something strange. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Relief. And that scared me. Because if relief feels stronger than love, something has been wrong for a long time. The drive home was quiet. No music. Just my thoughts. And they were loud. What if I lose my grandkids? What if she never speaks to me again? What if I regret this? But underneath those fears was a whisper. What if this is freedom? I didn't answer that whisper yet. I wasn't brave enough. But it stayed. That night, I told my wife everything. All the payments. All the threats. All the pressure. I expected anger. Disappointment. Maybe even I told you so. Instead, she just held my hand and said something simple. I was waiting for you to wake up. That hit hard. Because she had seen it all. And she had been waiting for me to see it too. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Yeah. It felt dramatic. But sometimes peace requires paperwork. We froze automatic transfers, closed shared access, rewrote documents, protected what we worked for, not out of spite, out of sanity. And when the money stopped flowing, the real chaos began. Calls, texts, voicemails, accusations. You're ruining us. You're selfish. You're punishing your own family. No. I was stopping the addiction. And addicts don't clap when the supply ends. The wildest part? I felt calmer every day. Like chains were quietly falling off. But I knew this wasn't over. People who rely on control don't surrender easily. And something bigger was coming. I could feel it. And trust me, what happened next? I never saw that one coming. And that's where things really got crazy. You'd think saying no would end a conversation. Nah. Sometimes it starts a war. And I didn't realize how serious that war would get. The first week after I cut off the money? Silence. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels planned. And I knew they were plotting something. Then the messages started. Long paragraphs. Blaming me for everything. You've changed. You're not the same father. You let her control you. That one made me laugh. Because for years I was the one being controlled. They said I embarrassed them. They said I ruined their stability. They said the kids were confused. And yeah, that hurt. Because I never wanted my grandkids caught in adult mess. But here's the thing nobody talks about. Sometimes protecting kids means disappointing their parents. And that's a hard pill to swallow. A few days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered. Shouldn't have. But I did. Her voice was calm. Too calm. That fake sweet tone people use when they're about to twist the knife. So this is how you want it? She asked. Like I filed for divorce or something. Like I betrayed her. I just want boundaries, I said. Simple. Clear. No yelling. Boundaries? She laughed. You're my father. Exactly. Not your bank. She said they were drowning. That bills were stacking up. That rent was late. And for a second, just a second, old guilt tried to sneak back in. That's the thing about breaking cycles. The old version of you will beg to return. It'll whisper, just fix it one more time. But I stayed quiet. You both can work, I said gently. And that's when the mask dropped. So you want us to struggle? No. I wanted them to grow up. The conversation ended with a threat. You won't see the kids if you keep this up. There it was. The weapon. I won't lie. That one hit. Hard. Because those kids. They're my heart. I sat there after the call ended, staring at my phone like it might explode. And I realized something ugly. Access to my grandkids had been rented to me. And now the rent was overdue. That night I didn't sleep much. I kept thinking about birthdays. School plays. Little hands grabbing mine. Was I really ready to risk losing that? But then another thought came. If I keep paying to see them, what lesson am I teaching? That love is transactional? That money equals presence? Nah. That's poison. A week passed. No visits. No calls from the kids. Just silence again. And silence can be louder than shouting. Then came the stunt. It was a delivery box. Left on our porch. No return address. No note. Just a box. My wife picked it up. It moved. Yeah. Moved. She dropped it so fast I thought it would shatter. We both froze. Heart racing. Adrenaline through the roof. I grabbed a tool from the garage and slowly opened it. Inside, a live snake. Small. Non-venomous. But alive. And terrified. My wife screamed. I swear my soul left my body for a second. Who does that? There was a folded paper taped inside the lid. Still not scared. That was it. Not funny. Not clever. Just twisted. I stood there holding that box and something inside me locked into place permanently. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about intimidation. And you don't negotiate with intimidation. I called the police. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just calmly. Filed a report. Showed them the messages. The threats. The history. You know what the officer said? This isn't about money. This is about control. Exactly. And when control slips away from someone used to having it, they escalate. Every time. We got cameras installed the next day. Changed locks. Documented everything. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted peace. The wild part? I wasn't even angry anymore. I was clear. Crystal clear. Love without respect turns ugly fast. And I had confused enabling with protecting. Big mistake. A few days later, she called again. You called the cops. Yes. You're treating me like a criminal. You sent a live animal to my house. What did you expect? Applause? It was a joke. Jokes are funny. That wasn't. She started crying then. Real tears. Or maybe performance tears. Hard to tell. You're destroying this family. No. I was refusing to bankroll chaos. And that's when she said something that finally exposed everything. You owe me. Not I need help. Not we are struggling. Oh. Like my existence was a debt. Like raising her created a lifetime tab I had to keep paying. That sentence? It freed me. Because you don't owe adult children comfort at the cost of your sanity. I told her calmly. I don't owe you money. I gave you a foundation. What you build on it is your responsibility. Silence. Then she hung up. After that, things escalated legally. We filed for a restraining order. Not because I hated her. Because I had to draw a line in concrete. Sitting in that courtroom felt surreal. You never imagine your own child on the other side of that room. But there we were. She looked angry. Her husband looked annoyed. Like this was an inconvenience. The judge reviewed everything. The messages. The threats. The snake. And granted the order. Just like that. And when we walked out of that building, I didn't feel victorious. I felt heavy. But also, safe. Safety matters. Even from your own blood. Weeks passed after that. No contact. No drama. No chaos. And something weird happened. The house felt lighter. My wife started humming again while cooking. I started sleeping through the night. My chest didn't feel tight anymore. Peace is underrated, man. Underrated. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the final chapter. Because when people lose control, they either double down, or they hit rock bottom. And I had no idea which path she'd choose. What happened next? I honestly didn't expect it. And that's where things finally started to shift. You ever notice how chaos has a sound? Phones buzzing. Voices raised. Doors slamming. Constant noise. And when it disappears, it's almost uncomfortable. That's how the weeks after the court order felt. Too quiet. Like the world hit mute. And I didn't know whether to relax or brace myself. At first, I kept checking the cameras. Every car that slowed down near the house made my heart jump. Every unknown number felt like a trap. Trauma doesn't switch off overnight. It lingers. But days passed. Then more days. Nothing. No angry texts. No fake apologies. No guilt trips about the kids. Just silence. And here's the weird part. I started feeling guilty about feeling peaceful. Yeah. Isn't that twisted? It's like when you leave a toxic job and suddenly sleep better. But part of you misses the stress because it was familiar. Familiar chaos feels safe. Healthy quiet feels strange. One afternoon, I was sitting in the backyard with a cup of coffee. Sun was out. Birds doing their thing. Normal life. And I realized something. For the first time in years. I wasn't waiting for a crisis. That hit deep. I used to live in constant anticipation. What bill would come next? What emergency would pop up? What emotional explosion would I have to calm down? I was always on standby. But now, nothing. It was just me, my thoughts, and peace. And peace felt unfamiliar. About a month later, the call finally came. Not from her. From a mutual friend. You heard what happened. My stomach dropped. Because when someone starts a sentence like that, it's never good news. Apparently, they had fallen behind on rent. Way behind. Car was repossessed. Credit maxed. Arguments loud enough for neighbors to hear. I didn't feel happy hearing that. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt sad. Because this is what happens when the safety net disappears. Reality hits full force. Later that night, my phone rang. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer. Almost. But something told me to pick up. It was her. But her voice? Different. No edge. No sarcasm. No attitude. Just tired. Can we talk? She asked. Not demand. Ask. That was new. We met in a public place. Neutral ground. Coffee shop. Daytime. She walked in alone. No husband. No backup. And she looked worn down. Not physically broken, but mentally drained. We sat across from each other, and for a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Just two humans trying to figure out how we got here. I'm not here to fight, she said quietly. I'm not here to fight either, I replied. She stared at her coffee for a long time before speaking again. We messed up. Not you messed up. Not this is your fault. We. That word mattered. She explained they had relied too much on help. Expected it. Built their lifestyle around it. And when it stopped, everything collapsed. That's not your fault, she admitted. We just never learned to stand on our own. Hearing that, it cracked something open in me. Because accountability is powerful. It changes the energy in a room. She told me they were both looking for steady work now. Actually budgeting. Talking to a debt counselor. Selling things they didn't need. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. But it was real. I was angry about the inheritance, she confessed. I felt like I had to wait for you to die to feel secure. That messed with my head. That sentence hurt. But at least it was honest. I was trying to protect you from exactly this, I said softly. She nodded. I see that now. Silence again. But this time it wasn't hostile. It was reflective. I don't expect money, she added quickly. I just didn't want things to end like that. End. Such a final word. I looked at her. Really looked. And I didn't see a villain. I saw someone who got used to being rescued and forgot how to swim. Enabling feels like love in the moment. But long term, it weakens people. I'm not undoing the legal changes, I said calmly. I won't go back to how it was. I know, she said. And here's what surprised me. She didn't argue. That was growth. Small, but real. We talked about the kids. School projects. Lost teeth. Little stuff. And when we stood up to leave, she hesitated. Can the kids see you this weekend? She asked. Not as leverage. Not as a threat. Just a question. Yes, I said. Because boundaries don't mean punishment. They mean structure. That weekend, the house was loud again. But the good kind of loud. Laughter. Running feet. Crumbs everywhere. And something felt different. There was no tension in the air. No unspoken financial expectation. No transactional undertone. Just family. Later that night, after they left, I sat on the couch and exhaled a breath I didn't know I was holding. It wasn't fixed. It wasn't perfect. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. But something had shifted. Rock bottom had done what arguments couldn't. It forced reflection. And sometimes, losing control is the only way people learn responsibility. Now don't get it twisted. I wasn't naive. Growth can relapse. Old habits can return. But this time, I wasn't afraid. Because the biggest change didn't happen in her. It happened in me. I wasn't scared to say no anymore. I wasn't scared to lose access. I wasn't scared of guilt. That's freedom. And when you stop reacting emotionally, people have to adjust. Months passed. No emergency calls. No manipulation. No drama stunts. Just slow rebuilding. Smaller relationship. Healthier distance. Clear rules. And honestly, it felt right. Not the fairy tale version of family. The real version. Messy. Human. But balanced. And then Father's Day came. I didn't expect anything. Didn't wait by the phone. Didn't hope for grand gestures. Just another day. But a small package arrived. No return address. For a split second, my heart jumped. Old memories of that snake box flashing back. But this one didn't move. I opened it slowly. Inside was a framed photo. The kids at a school fair. Big smiles. Missing teeth. Holding some messy science project. Behind it was a handmade card. Happy Father's Day. Mom says you taught her something important this year. We love you. At the bottom, in smaller handwriting. Thanks for not giving up on me. I sat there holding that card for a long time. Because that's the thing about boundaries. They're not about pushing people away. They're about teaching them where the line is. And when the line is clear, respect has room to grow. I placed that frame on the mantel. Not upside down. Not hidden. Right in the center. And for the first time in years, Father's Day didn't feel heavy. It felt peaceful. Not because everything was perfect, but because everything was honest. And trust me, honest peace hits different. But here's the real twist. The biggest lesson in all of this? It wasn't about money. It wasn't about courtrooms. It wasn't about snakes in boxes. It was about this. If you keep rescuing someone from consequences, you rob them of growth. And if you keep paying for love, you'll never know if it was real. I almost lost myself trying to hold everything together. But sometimes, the strongest thing you can say is no. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is step back. That quiet switch that flipped inside me that day, it never flipped back. And I'm glad it didn't. Because peace, once you taste it, you don't trade it for chaos again. Not for anyone. Not even family. And that's the truth. You think once boundaries are set, everything just magically fixes itself? Nah. That's movie stuff. Real life is messy. Progress wobbles. People slip. Trust rebuilds slow. After that Father's Day, things felt lighter. But light doesn't mean healed. It just means you're not drowning anymore. For a while, visits stayed normal. Short. Respectful. No money talk. No weird tension. But I noticed something in her. Pride. The kind that makes it hard to fully admit you were wrong. The kind that still wants to say, well, you could have handled it better too. And maybe I could have. I enabled it. That part's on me. One evening, during a visit, she made a small comment. You know, if you had just explained things earlier, it wouldn't have gotten so bad. There it was. The shift. Subtle blame. Old me. I would have defended myself. Argued. Explained. Reopened the wound. New me. I stayed calm. I did explain, I said gently. You just weren't ready to hear it. Not sharp. Not aggressive. Just honest. She didn't respond. But she heard it. And that's something I learned through all this. You don't have to win every conversation. You just have to stand steady. Because the moment you get defensive, the old pattern creeps back in. A few months later, something else happened. Her husband lost his job. Again. And I knew before the call even came. You can feel it. That familiar energy building. Like storm clouds you've seen before. She called. Voice careful. We are figuring it out, she said quickly. Almost rehearsed. I'm working extra shifts. He's applying everywhere. Good, I thought. That's adulting. Then came the pause. And here it comes, I told myself. The ask. But it didn't come. Instead she said, I just wanted you to hear it from me, not someone else. That moment, that was growth. She wasn't asking to be rescued. She was informing me, respectfully. And I realized something huge. Boundaries don't just protect you. They teach people how to approach you. Before, crisis meant I fix it. Now, crisis meant they fix it. That shift. Powerful. But let me be real. It wasn't easy watching them struggle. There were days I wanted to transfer money quietly. Just to ease it. Just to make it smoother. Because when you love someone, you don't like seeing them stressed. But then I'd remember the snake. The courtroom. The you owe me. And I'd remember the lesson. Helping isn't always loving. Sometimes helping is harming. A year passed. A full year without financial dependency. That might not sound like much. But for us, it was huge. They downsized apartments. Sold the fancy car. Budgeted groceries. Lived within reality. And something surprising happened. They got stronger. Arguments lessened. Blame reduced. Accountability increased. Turns out, when you remove the safety net, people either fall apart or learn to balance. One afternoon, she came over alone again. Sat at the kitchen table. I used to be angry that you didn't trust us with money, she said. I waited. Now I realize, you didn't trust us because we weren't trustworthy with it. That sentence, that's maturity. Not perfect. Not glowing redemption. Just real self-awareness. And that's when I finally felt something close to peace with the whole thing. Not because everything was fixed, but because the dynamic changed. I wasn't the villain anymore. And I wasn't the wallet either. I was just father. And she was just adult daughter. Separate lives. Connected by love. Not by transactions. But here's something nobody tells you. Even when things get better, a scar remains. Trust rebuilds. But memory doesn't erase. Every once in a while, a comment will trigger that old sting. Every once in a while, I'll catch myself double-checking tone for hidden expectations. Healing doesn't mean amnesia. It means awareness without bitterness. And I had to work on that too. Because holding grudges? That's another prison. One evening, we were sitting outside, just talking. Sun setting. Kids playing in the yard. She looked at me and said, You really were ready to walk away, weren't you? Yes, I answered. Even if it meant not seeing us. That question lingered in the air. I was ready to walk away from disrespect, I said. Not from you. She nodded slowly. And I think that's when she finally understood the difference. Love doesn't mean access without limits. Family doesn't mean immunity from consequences. And respect isn't automatic, it's maintained. Now here's the part that changed me the most. I stopped seeing myself as the victim. Yeah, that's important. Because for a long time, I told myself, they took advantage of me. But truth? I allowed it. I confused sacrifice with value. I thought being needed meant being loved. Big mistake. Being needed financially isn't the same as being respected emotionally. And once I saw that clearly, I stopped chasing approval through giving. That freedom, man, it's addictive in the best way. Years from now, will we laugh about the snake in a box? Probably not. Some things stay heavy. But we will remember the shift. The moment things almost broke beyond repair. And maybe that's what saved us. Because sometimes families don't explode loudly. They erode quietly. And the only way to stop erosion is to build solid ground. That's what boundaries did. They built ground. Not walls. Ground. And now, when we sit together on holidays, there's no hidden tension about money. No silent calculation of inheritance. Just food. Laughter. Noise. Normal. And normal feels like a blessing after chaos. If you're listening to this and you're stuck in something similar, feeling guilty for wanting respect, feeling scared to say no, feeling trapped by family obligation, hear me clearly. You can love someone and still refuse to fund their dysfunction. You can care deeply and still demand accountability. You can walk away from chaos without walking away from love. And the quiet switch inside you, trust it, because sometimes that switch is your soul saying, enough. And when you finally listen to it, that's when real change begins. Not loud, not dramatic, just steady. And steady wins in the long run. That's the full truth. Not revenge, not punishment, not bitterness, just boundaries. And peace. And peace is priceless. You know what hurts more than being disrespected? Realizing you kept begging for respect. Yeah, that kind of truth stings different. For years, I kept calling first. I kept fixing things. I kept showing up even when I wasn't wanted. And every time, I told myself, it's family. Just swallow it. But swallowing pride every day, that mess poisons you slowly. After that last conversation, I stopped. No big announcement. No dramatic speech. Just silence. Cold. Clean. Silence. And let me tell you something crazy. The world didn't end. The sky didn't fall. Nobody came running. It was just quiet. At first, I kept checking my phone. Maybe she'd call. Maybe she'd text. Maybe she'd say, I'm sorry. But days turned into weeks. Nothing. And in that nothing, I found space. Space to breathe. Space to think. Space to remember who I was before I became useful. You ever notice how some people only love you when you're solving their problems? When you're paying the bills? When you're the emergency contact? But the second you step back, you're selfish. Funny how that works, huh? One evening, I was sitting alone with a cup of tea. No noise. No drama. Just me and my thoughts. And I asked myself a question I had been avoiding for years. Why am I afraid to be alone? That question hit hard. Because the truth was ugly. I wasn't scared of being alone. I was scared of not being needed. Yeah. Read that again. Some of us confuse being needed with being loved. And that right there, that's a dangerous mix. The more I sat with that thought, the more I saw it clearly. I wasn't fighting for love. I was fighting for relevance. And that's exhausting, man. Straight up exhausting. So I made a decision. No more chasing. No more proving. No more explaining my worth. If you can't see it, that's on you. I started focusing on small things. Morning walks. Reading books I ignored for years. Fixing old things around the house just because I wanted to. And slowly, I felt lighter. Not happy. Not healed. Just lighter. There's a difference. One day, a friend asked me, "Do you miss them?" I paused. Of course I did. You don't turn off love like a switch. But I didn't miss the tension. I didn't miss walking on eggshells. I didn't miss shrinking myself to fit someone else's comfort. And that realization? That was growth. A few months passed. Then one afternoon, my phone rang. Her name flashed on the screen. My heart jumped. Of course it did. I'm human. I stared at the phone for a good 10 seconds. Not angry. Not excited. Just calm. I answered. Her voice sounded softer, less sharp, less commanding. She asked how I was. And for the first time, I didn't lie. I'm peaceful, I said. That word hung in the air. Peaceful. She didn't know how to respond to that. Because peace means you're no longer in war. And when someone loses control over your emotions, it shakes them. She said she wanted to talk. Said things had been hard. Said she felt overwhelmed. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I didn't defend myself. I didn't attack. I just listened. Because sometimes silence teaches louder than shouting. She apologized. Not perfectly. Not deeply. But it was a start. And here's where it gets real. I didn't jump back in. I didn't say, "It's okay, forget everything." Nope. I said, "I forgive you. But things will be different." That line. That's boundaries. Forgiveness doesn't mean access. Remember that. We met a week later. Face to face. She looked tired. Older somehow. Life humbles people when you stop shielding them from consequences. We talked for hours. Some tears. Some long silences. Some uncomfortable truths. She admitted she had pushed too far. Admitted she let someone else influence her thinking. Admitted she thought I'd never walk away. That part made me sad. Because she wasn't wrong. For years, I never walked away. But I had to. Not to hurt her. Not to win. But to survive. We didn't magically fix everything that day. Real life isn't a movie. But something shifted. Respect. Real respect. Not the fake I need you right now respect. But the kind that comes when someone realizes you have limits. And limits are healthy. Now, don't get me wrong. We are still rebuilding. Slowly. Carefully. With boundaries. Because love without boundaries? That's just emotional chaos. And I'm too old for chaos. Here's what I learned from all of this. You can love someone deeply and still refuse to be disrespected. You can forgive and still protect yourself. You can step back without hating anyone. Walking away doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you started caring about yourself. And if someone only values you when you're bending over backward, that ain't love. That's convenience. So yeah, I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I didn't beg. I stepped back. And sometimes, that's the strongest move you can make. But here's the part most people don't talk about. What happens when they come back? And trust me, that part changes everything. Because when someone returns, you have to decide who you are now. And that decision, that's where the real power sits. But I'll tell you what happened next. And it's not what you think. You ever go through something that breaks you, but instead of shattering, you harden in the right places? That's what happened to me. Not revenge. Not anger. Not some dramatic I'll show you comeback. Just growth. Quiet, steady growth. After that meeting, after the apology, after the tears, life didn't magically turn perfect. We still had awkward moments. Still had misunderstandings. Still had days where old habits tried to sneak back in. But something was different. Me. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I wasn't jumping to fix every little problem. I wasn't shrinking myself just to keep the peace. And guess what? People noticed. When you stop over-explaining. When you stop begging to be understood. When you stop bending every time someone pushes. They feel it. At first, it confused them. Then it unsettled them. Then, they adjusted. Because the energy you accept is the energy people give you. I remember one day she said, "You've changed." And I smiled. Not sarcastic. Not bitter. Just calm. I had to, I said. And that was the truth. I had to change. Because the old version of me thought love meant endurance. Thought loyalty meant silence. Thought being strong meant absorbing everything. Nah. Strength is knowing when to say, "That's enough." Strength is sitting alone and not panicking. Strength is loving someone without losing yourself. Strength is walking away without slamming the door. And here's something real. For a long time, I thought being needed meant being valuable. But now, I know better. Being respected, that's value. Being appreciated, that's value. Being treated like a human being, not a tool, that's value. Everything else? That's noise. Our relationship now. It's not perfect. But it's honest. If something crosses the line, I say it. Calmly. Clearly. No shouting. No drama. And when she listens, that's growth on her side too. Because this wasn't just about me changing. It was about both of us realizing something important. Love without respect collapses. But love with boundaries? That stands. And let me tell you something that might surprise you. Walking away didn't destroy the relationship. It saved it. Because sometimes people don't realize your value until they feel your absence. That's not manipulation. That's reality. When you're always there, always available, always fixing, they forget you have limits. They forget you're human. But when you step back, they see the gap. And that gap speaks loud. Now I live differently. I wake up lighter. I speak softer but firmer. I give love freely, but not blindly. And here's the biggest thing I learned. You can love your family and still choose yourself. You can forgive without reopening old wounds. You can rebuild without pretending nothing happened. And most importantly, you can walk away without becoming the villain. Because protecting your peace isn't selfish. It's necessary. So if you're listening to this and you feel stuck, if you feel like you're constantly bending, constantly proving, constantly swallowing your pride, let me tell you straight. You don't have to explode. You don't have to scream. You don't have to destroy everything. Sometimes the strongest move is simple. Step back. Let silence do the talking. Let absence teach the lesson. Let time reveal the truth. And while they're figuring it out, you figure you out. Build your peace. Protect your dignity. Remember your worth. Because the day you stop begging for respect is the day respect starts finding you. And that quiet smile I gave that day, it wasn't anger. It wasn't surrender. It was clarity. The kind that says, I finally see it. And once you see clearly, you can't unsee. And once you know your worth, you can't unknow it. That's how it ended. Not with revenge. Not with shouting. Not with broken pieces. But with boundaries. With calm. With growth. And yeah, with peace. Real peace. And trust me, that peace, it's priceless. For such more stories, do subscribe to our channel.